Part 95. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 944. Greet was busy communicating with the great witch priests, while Ratone and Valensimo took turns to compete with the warriors of various tribes. In the end, even Cyrilla was happy to see Hunter Xion and had a fight with a certain war chief. Greet, Cyrilla, please take it easy. Don't get too excited and just transform back into your dragon form. After this round of exchanges, Gretel was able to directly observe the power of several large tribes, as well as the power of the totem gods of each tribe. That night, when they returned to the mage's cabin after dinner, Gretel frowned and spoke. "We can't go any further. Our strength is definitely not enough." Bernard and Valensimo nodded silently. Bernard is now at level 9. After turning on the madness, his combat power can be calculated as level 10, and he can only fight against the White Eagle warrior. Valensimo is a level 12 warrior. After receiving Gretel's full support, he is a high-level 12th level warrior. In this way, you can only lose in the battle with the Great Chief, and you will lose without any resistance. Obviously, their abilities can only compete with the White Eagle warriors, and there is a clear gap between them and the Golden Eagle warriors. Can't beat it, can't beat it. I can still beat him, Cyrilla muttered unconvincingly. That great chief was knocked down by me. Don't think I didn't see you secretly using magic. Greet sighed helplessly. According to the evaluation of his senior brothers and sisters, Cyrilla's combat power in dragon form is level 16 to 17, in elf form, it is at most level 15. However, her strength will be partially blessed, and she secretly gave herself the power of a bull. But if I try my best, I can hit as many as I can. Cyrilla raised her arms, hooked her fist hard, and made a movement to show off her biceps. Gretel looked at her helplessly. Can you beat 12? 15? 18? Well. Cyrilla hesitated. Golden Eagle warriors are at least level 13 to 14, and maybe level 15 or above. As for the snake god priest, or snake girl, if both sides are evenly matched, they should be level 15 or above. Even if she transforms into dragon form, she might not be able to defeat him. Moreover, if she transforms into a dragon form, the spell's blessing to her will be very little. Also, what if the eagle god and the snake god attack together? Are you sure you can beat them? A totem god who can bestow, or in other words, inspire 12 high-level warriors, at least level 18, and may even be a legend. Counting the snake god, 2 legends. He alone, or rather, a small team of them, wants to single-handedly save people from 2 legends, 12 to 18, or even 24 masters above level 15, and a country's warriors. Cyrilla shriveled up visibly. The silver blue eyes, the brilliant hair, and even the drop-shaped gem in the center of her eyebrows have all become dim. She lay on the table, supported her cheek with her arms, and murmured softly. I just told you to call your parents. Dad, Mom, if that doesn't work, you can call a few more relatives and take action together. It will definitely be fine. Greet was already lost in thought. He took out several large and small plates and cups and placed them on the ground, moving them here and there, constantly comparing the black colors. The Kestrel and Buffalo tribes, together, cannot defeat the Plague Maiden. The Plague Maiden has gained a lot of power recently and is preparing to annex the Eagle Kingdom. Even if the Eagle Nation repels the Plague Maiden, its strength will be greatly reduced. At this time, the Kestrel, Bison and other tribes will charge forward, and they should be able to argue with reason or physics. But the problem is that if the Plague Girl cannot bite these tribes, she may not be strong enough. If she is not strong enough, she will not devour the Hawk God and Snake God. Also, when the Plague Girl attacks the Eagle Kingdom, Brother Lin may be in trouble, even if they lose and retreat, they still have to pass through the other side's territory if they want to go to the Eagle Kingdom. There is no way to confirm the duration of the war and the extent of the losses suffered by the Eagle country. It's very difficult to do. Of course, there is another way, which is to negotiate with the Eagle country. Provide a way to fight the epidemic in exchange for their release of Lin. But first, how to get in touch with the Eagle country, second, how to convince them, third, how to get them to agree to release him. Unite all the forces that can be united and defeat the enemy together. This sentence is easy to say but difficult to do. Greed held his head and muttered softly. Tribal Alliance, Plague Maiden, Eagle Kingdom, the three plates were moved around, joined vertically and horizontally, and kept brainstorming. He suddenly froze and stayed where he was, staring at the pottery dish that was as black as night among the colorful dishes and the golden dishes, and murmured to himself. It's not right. What's wrong? Cyrilla quickly stretched her head. Hold the plate between your slender fingers, turn it over, turn it over. Is this plate poisoned? Or is it under some kind of spell that will harm you? No way. It has been kept in the space bag. I have been looking at it since I took it out. That's not the case. Gretel took the black plate, placed it between the colored plate and the gold plate, and carefully arranged it according to region. Cyrilla, look. The Tribal Alliance. He pointed to the colorful plate. It's so big, and there are only so many people. Even if there are dead people, all of them died the year before and last, so there won't be a sudden increase in people this year. Pointing to the golden plate again. The same goes for the Eagle country. There are no sudden changes. So, why did the disease girl suddenly become active? It is said that her strength increased greatly, she encountered an opportunity, and she wanted to cross a certain threshold. Where is that opportunity? What is it? Gave it strength. Perhaps too many people died last year or the year before. Cyrilla tilted her head and thought. Or too many animals died. Gretel, haven't you always said that after a great disaster, there must be a great epidemic? Since the great epidemic, hasn't the power of the plague girl followed? That's not entirely true. Greet shook his head slowly. His eyes were still fixed on the black saucer, and he unconsciously fiddled with the edge of the disc and slowly rotated it. After a major disaster, there must be a major epidemic. Generally speaking, there are too many dead bodies, which pollute the water source. Bacteria multiply wildly, in this case, Shigella dysentery, Salmonella, Shigella, these will be very active. He frantically recalled the knowledge of medical microbiology, infectious diseases, and epidemiology in his previous life, and murmured in a low voice. The plagues sweeping across the earth should be mainly dysentery, typhoid fever, cholera, and typhus, but this time it's smallpox. Isn't smallpox not possible? Cyrilla asked disapprovingly. Gretel stared at the plates in front of him, his eyes becoming more and more solemn. Smallpox is not a disease native to the New World. In fact, smallpox is. It was one of the largest epidemics that spread from the Old World to the New World, brought by colonists and transmitted to the natives of the New World. Measles, chickenpox, and smallpox were diseases that the colonists had become accustomed to. They had acquired immunity from waves of epidemics since childhood. When they arrived in the New World, they directly killed every room in the house. Greet suddenly slapped his head and waved his hand to summon a silent phantom, outlining the picture of the continent. He placed the colorful, black and gold plates in their respective areas, took out a white plate, and solemnly placed it to the south of the gold plate. That's right, that's right. That's how it should be. What? The Holy See of Glory? The subjects of the Lord of Glory, whether intentionally or unintentionally, will bring smallpox to the local indigenous people. Gretel stared at a row of 4 plates, trembling slightly with excitement. If the glorious Holy See happens to gather forces and wants to attack the Eagle Kingdom, but cannot defeat it because of insufficient troops and no support, What method will they take? Will they give these sources of infection to the disease girl to strengthen her? The power of. Anyway, what the glory Holy See wants is gold and wealth. Even if 1/3, half, or 3/4 of the people in the Eagle Country die, they don't care. As long as the people they send have enough healing power or are already immune to smallpox. It is not difficult to find a group of people who came from the old continent who have immunity. If this plan is planned a year in advance, infecting the soldiers with smallpox, and then directly curing them with removed disease, it can be done in batches. Create a group of people. We need to investigate the situation. Greet stared at the plates excitedly and spoke faster and faster. He suddenly stretched out his hand, moved the colored plate to the south, and touched it lightly with the white plate. We need to ask people from these tribes to help understand the activities of the Glory Holy See. If they are really causing trouble, then contact the Eagle Country. The Eagle Country will need help, and then ask them to let Lin An go. It's easy to talk about. Sarala. Come with me, he stood up suddenly. Let's go talk to some chiefs and the witch priest. Mr. Baransimo. Go talk to other people and find out as much as possible whether anyone from the glorious Holy See is haunting the south. There was a crash and everyone acted quickly. Greet and Sarala walked out of the mage's hut together and walked towards the temple on the other side of the mound. As soon as they reached the center of the martial arts field, an eagle's cry resounded through the night sky. The Kestrel tribe, in Greet's surprised eyes, a bit of golden light illuminated the night sky. Getting closer and closer, finally, everyone saw a warrior wearing golden armor standing in the void, leaning down to look down, with golden wings flapping gently behind his back. I am the Golden Eagle warrior Trika. I am here to inform you on the order of the leader. Before the arrival of the spring equinox, you must gather more than 10,000 warriors to join forces with the Eagle Kingdom to defeat the Plague Maiden and the White Ghost. Okay, no need to ask anyone. The Holy See of Glory must have made some move. As soon as Gretel's thoughts turned to this, the Golden Eagle warrior suddenly raised his hand, and golden light fell down, shrinking him and Sarala in it like a fence. You also have white ghosts here? Anyone else? Let me take them away immediately. Today's subscription price dropped by almost 130% off for new editions. 50% off for monthly passes. All indicators plummeted. What did I do wrong? Obviously you still loved me yesterday. Hurry up and throw your guaranteed monthly pass to me. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Thanks to @Yamengbing for the 500 starting coin reward. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Jialan 2020. Chapter 945. The declaration of the Golden Eagle warriors resounded everywhere. On the 4th floor of the mound, and on the surrounding earthen platforms dotted around, large groups of witch priests, warriors, and civilians came out angrily or dazedly, looking up. Mr. Valansimo had a cautious expression on his face, holding a knife in one hand and an unknown object in the other, hiding himself in the shadow of the mage's hut, ready to attack. Bernard, with his face full of anger, took off the bone stick in his hand and rushed out. What did you say? The Golden Eagle warrior's attention turned instantly. He paused for a moment on Bernard, as if he was a little confused. He had never seen this tall man before, and he had to think about it for a moment whether he was the white ghost he recognized. However, soon, he stared at Valansimo behind Bernard. There are still white ghosts here. Kestrel tribe, what are you doing standing still? Why don't you hand over the white ghosts quickly? Greet frowned slightly. He fluttered his hands, put on a large number of shields on himself, and looked around. Hey, tribal leaders, are you just watching? See that Golden Eagle warrior coming to catch me? If I really take action, I won't stay here. When he was away from home, he followed his teacher's instructions and retained 1/3 of his mana at all times, no matter how pitiful the patient was and was about to die. As expected, it came in handy now. Not only could I set up a shield for myself, but I could also add 2 more to Cyrilla without panicking at all. Sarah, on the other hand, was already eager to try. She reached out to grab the golden cage beside her, but was stopped by Gretel several times. "What are you trying to do? Let's take a look at the attitudes of these natives first. If they have a bad attitude, we will try to rush out and stay far away from them." The treatment techniques that were thrown out before and the cowpox vaccine that was given to them were just fed to the dogs. Fortunately, these natives did not disappoint him. There was a roar from the ground, and the chief of the Kestrel tribe, the strong man who claimed to have defeated the Golden Eagle Warrior, rose into the sky. "Dear Golden Eagle Warrior." He opened his arms and blocked the warrior with wings on his back and a spear in his hand. The power given to him by the god of Kestrel could not allow him to hover freely. He could only fly quickly in a circle while shouting, "These people are not white ghosts, whoosh. Fly over. Not the enemy that brings death and war, whoosh. Fly over. They are our friends, whoosh. Fly over again. He is the benefactor who treats our patients and protects healthy warriors from diseases, whoosh. Fly over, circle twice in a row." Gretel. "This, we have been strictly trained and generally do not laugh." He turned his face to one side, glanced at the Golden Eagle Warrior from the corner of his eye, and tried his best to straighten the corners of his mouth. Even Cyrilla stopped her angry hand and no longer pulled the golden light fence, but instead charged, silently. "Whenever you rush down to arrest someone, you will be beaten to death." The Golden Eagle Warrior Trika did not come down to arrest anyone. On the contrary, he and the chief of the Kestrel tribe went back and forth, fighting in circles, and the sky was full of splendor. Chief Kestrel held 2 thin blades in his hands, pulling up, diving, pulling up again, and diving again. Every impact was accompanied by a sharp roar. Several times it passed by the Golden Eagle Warrior, and the wings behind the Golden Eagle Warrior trembled slightly, and dense ripples were cut out. Trika, on the other hand, holds a spear, thrusting forward, sweeping forward, and lifting upwards. The spear tip was glowing with golden light, and Chief Kestrel approached several times, and had to turn urgently several times to avoid the attack of the spear. Not to mention being penetrated by the tip of the spear, he didn't even dare to touch the edge of the golden light. Cyrilla, looked carefully on the ground. Gretel and the silver dragon girl were next to each other, whispering to each other. Greet pointed at the battle above, speaking softly. "That spear is very lethal. If you have to take off to fight later, be sure not to be hit by it. You haven't fought a flying warrior yet, right? Move if you can, and move as far as you can. They are very maneuverable in the air. I've beaten him. I've even killed him." Cyrilla suddenly covered her mouth. "Blink, blink, blink, raise your head and stare upward, pretending not to say anything." Greet shrugged and sighed. Cyrilla has been with him these past few years and has no time to go out and shout and kill. To feel so guilty, maybe he secretly killed those envoys of the glorious Holy See when he was in the Dwarf King's court? That time the dagger got stuck in your toenail? Among that group of people, it should be normal for there to be someone who can rely on equipment to fly into the sky. However, it should be different from the Golden Eagle Warrior, who relies on his wings to fly into the sky. Just after saying these few words, the battle in the sky suddenly changed again. Chief Kestrel raised his arms and let out a long roar. Suddenly, the shadow of a falcon was shrouded in his body. He folded his wings and rushed towards him at high speed. The bird's beak, wingtips, and claws were all twisted and twisted, as if they were being torn apart by blades of wind. Opposite him, the Golden Eagle Warrior also raised his spear, and golden flames burned all over his body. They hit each other hard. A golden eagle and a kestrel rolled into a ball in the air. Wing beat, beak peck, claw strike. Brick red, gray blue, and golden feathers are flying in the sky, falling like snowflakes. Brick red and gray blue feathers fell on the roof, causing the roof to crack, falling to the ground exploded. And wherever the golden feathers floated, they immediately ignited a flame. Tisk, 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 tisk. Greet admired softly. So far, his strongest attack method is the super double fireball. It may not be very effective against this kind of golden eagle warrior with golden flames. Or, he needs to develop some more drastic means. For example, the ice ray blessed by liquid nitrogen. Another example, the ice wall blessed by liquid nitrogen has multiple reflections and reflects the rays back to him. While I was thinking about it, there was a loud bang above my head, and the kestrel screamed loudly and fell crookedly to the ground. A long gash was opened in the golden eagle's chest, and golden flames poured out continuously, making the figure become more and more illusory. The golden flame warrior Trika urgently restrained his foreign minister, pulled it up, flew out of the mound in one breath, and said sternly, "Chief Kestrel, do you really want to disobey the orders of the Eagle Kingdom? Aren't you afraid that the 12 golden eagles will gather together to eradicate your small tribe and sell all the people into slavery? Haha, little Trika, you seem to be in trouble." Far, far away, the enchanting and charming laughter blew in the night wind. The sound was not loud, but it was like a small hand, gently touching everyone's heart. On the high platform of the mound, for a moment, there was a sound of heavy breathing. Even Greet was in a daze for a moment. There was a heavy snort next to him, and he quickly glanced at Cyrilla and quickly took out a silver hood. "Put it on, zip it up, and fasten it. If you don't have enough equipment and abilities to deal with the control system, the Faraday cage is the way to go." The golden eagle warrior suddenly turned back, his eyes like fire. In the very distance, a little golden light quietly lit up and flew towards it quickly. When they got closer, they saw another older golden eagle warrior coming quietly accompanied by a female priest. The whole body of the priestess was shrouded in a halo of light, which looked black and white at first glance, but appeared to be nothing at all if you looked closely. As soon as she arrived, 2 golden eagle warriors came naturally, one on the left and one on the right, guarding her. She gently pulled up her long hair, and the phosphorescent light on her fingertips shone gently in her hair. She lowered her head and looked down. "What's going on? Why are you fighting?" They hid the white ghost and refused to hand it over. "The chief of the Kestrel tribe even fought against me because of the white ghost." Trika rushed to complain. On the ground, the heads of the Kestrel tribe, the Bison tribe, the Black Panther tribe, and several other large tribes retorted. "These distinguished guests are not white ghosts. They healed our people. They were benefactors. We respect the Eagle country and are willing to fight side by side with the Eagle warriors. However, you can't step on our heads and give orders like this, and start a fight if you don't agree. Noisy, noisy." The priestess smiled softly, raised her hands flat and pressed them down, indicating that she should be calm. Her eyes moved, and just when she was about to speak, her whole body suddenly stiffened for a moment. Cyrilla held the 2 golden light fences with both hands, squeezed inward, and pressed them together. He pulled it up with one hand, crumpled the 2 golden lights into a ball with the other hand, and threw them directly into his mouth. While chewing, he grabbed the other 2 golden fences and squeezed again. "This." The priestess floated down, cautiously keeping a dozen meters away from Cyrilla, and asked softly. Cyrilla was eating happily, clicking, clicking, as if chewing shortbread. When he looked up and saw her in his busy schedule, he immediately stretched out his arms and waved around her. Click, 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 click. All the golden fences were grasped in her hands, and she held them back in front of her vigilantly. "What's the matter? These are mine. If you use them to imprison me, they are mine." Sarala puffed out her cheeks and stared at the other person while eating. The priestess's gorgeous red lips opened slightly. She didn't know how to speak for a moment. Only the tips of her hair flickered slightly and she made a gentle snake hiss. "These golden lights are all divine powers given by the eagle god, carrying the power of the sun's fire. Although it is thin, not everyone can catch it with bare hands, and not everyone can use it as a snack. The silver-haired girl in front of me, is she a new god?" Greed kept staring at Sarala closely, watching her red lips open and close, watching her silver teeth bite, and watching the golden light shattering piece by piece. "Use your eyes to see, your ears to hear, and your mind to sense every change in her energy and vitality." After watching for a while, he made sure that there was nothing wrong with Sarala eating like this, then he took a step forward and said loudly, "We are not the white ghosts you call us. In fact, although we all come from far away, we and the white ghosts you call us have always been enemies and have been fighting for many years. Just a few months ago, we even had a big battle." He threw out several trophies, a broken silver crown, a broken longsword, a pale golden humerus, each of them was flowing with the unique holy power of the glorious Holy See. Greed pointed to these fragments and said calmly, "I killed these people. Have you fought with them for a long time before?" "You." Trika's expression changed, and he almost blurted out, but was hit back by a blast of wind from the older golden eagle warrior. Greed turned a blind eye and said with a smile, "According to my speculation, these white ghosts should collude with the plague girl and give new plague seeds to the plague girl to enhance her strength in order to capture the eagle kingdom. And I can help you with the ability to resist this kind of disease, the power of the plague. Now, can we have a good talk? Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of a new book from a friend. This CEO is so good at getting along, he's really into a romantic relationship." Xiao Mu, the 18th tier starlet, was blamed by the crew from the sky, and for no apparent reason, she became the mistress condemned by the entire network. She obviously doesn't know the other party. Fortunately, the invisible boss came from the sky to escort. It seems that the female channel no longer has perfect attendance, and can only rely on rankings to get rewards. New books are on the list. If you are interested, please click here. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Jialan 2020. Chapter 946. Chapter 943. Nodmark, the youngest son of Gretel Thor? Monthly ticket adds 2 updates. The priestess' expression quickly became serious. She waved her hand gently, and the elderly golden eagle warrior who accompanied her immediately took half a step and grabbed the void. Several fragments flew towards him, and he held them up in both hands and brought them to the priestess. "Priest of Tidland. These things have traces of the power of the white ghost, I can feel it." The snake god priest named Tidland said nothing, staring at the fragments intently, closing his eyes, opening them, closing them again, and opening them again. In a daze, Greed seemed to see her pitch-black pupils elongate and straighten in an instant, emitting a cold green light. There is a touch of resentment on it, there are obvious traces of life and death. Priest Tidland spoke slowly in a trance-like tone with a hint of hiss. She raised her gaze and glanced at Greed. Her slender fingers intertwined together and softly made several weird gestures. Hush ha, hush ha 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 ha. A series of breathy sounds came from her plump lips painted gold. Gretel suddenly leaned back and took half a step back. At that moment, there seemed to be something dark and cold, rushing towards him from the night, no, from the ground, or from a darker and deeper place, as if it wanted to choose someone and devour him. But this feeling only flashed slightly. When he came back to his senses, there was still a clear breeze and bright moon in front of him. The priestess stood upright not far away, guarded by two warriors on one left and one on the right. She raised her eyes from the silver crown fragment and stared at Greed. He hates you. The owners of these fragments, they hate you. You did kill them. So, we have a basis for negotiation. Gretel spread his arms, palms forward, making a friendly gesture. The priestess changed the subject. But that doesn't mean that you are their enemy. What if you only have enmity with these people? What if you are only hostile to the forces they belong to? What if you are a member of the White Ghost? Where is the executioner responsible for executing these people? She made a guess, and the expressions on Sarah's, Bernard's, and Mr. Valensimo's faces darkened. When one's own boss is suspected, it is equivalent to being insulted, and no one can watch it. Valensimo took a step forward and said angrily, "Hello. My name is Gretel Nordmark." Gretel raised his left hand with his palm straight up, stopping the guide from speaking. He stared at the priestess and said calmly, "Before I set off from the kingdom, I was ranked 198th on the wanted list of the glorious Holy See. If you have priests and bishops from the glorious Holy See, you can ask them if they have heard of my name. Or, do you know who my teacher is?" The priestess listened to his words carefully. She lowered her eyelashes slightly, recited Gret Nordmark silently several times, and turned to the Golden Eagle warrior beside her. "Trika, please send a message back and let them inquire. I remember how many high-level White Ghost prisoners there are in the secret prison." Trika was a little reluctant. The priestess couldn't help but her eyes wandered, and she said softly, "Please, this is very important to us." The young Golden Eagle warrior reluctantly muttered a few words, but in the end he moved his hand back and spread his hands. A pair of palm-sized, light, and soft hands, with golden wings falling on his palms. He lowered his voice and said a few words quickly to the wings, then turned around and lowered his head, facing the southwest, holding the pair of wings high between his eyebrows. With a whistling sound, the pair of golden wings shot into the clouds and disappeared instantly. As soon as the golden wings flew away, Trika's aura immediately dropped by a level. Gretel stood aside from the beginning to the end and did not participate in the slightest. He did not raise his right hand until they were finished. A silent phantom rose at my fingertips. In front of everyone, maps of several continents were sketched. The White Ghosts you are talking about are the clergy who believe in the Lord of Radiance, or the kingdom under the rule of the Holy See of Radiance. They are here. The white areas of the old world radiated a ray of light. Seeing the priestess nodding, Gretel pointed to the island country next to the old continent. "We are here. And you are here. The green kingdom of Kent and the reddish-brown new world shine in turn. Next is the black area where the plague girl is, and then there is the Golden Eagle country. In addition to their own homeland, the White Ghosts also occupy a large area of the Storm Islands and the New World. The white area spread rapidly until it borders the Eagle country. These people are your enemies and our enemies. We can definitely join forces to fight against them." The priestess smiled. Her dark and slender eyelashes were gently raised, her face was slightly tilted, and the tail of her eyes were coated with dark green malachite powder, and a little gold powder shone charmingly. "Okay. Then let's talk about it together." Greet clearly heard Cyrilla humming heavily in her ear. The priestess expressed her stance, and the situation finally progressed from the fighting stage to the negotiation stage. Of course, before negotiating, the goods must also be inspected. The so-called White Ghosts are our enemies and so on. Greed handed over the certificate of surrender, which can be regarded as proof. "But as the saying goes, he helps our warriors resist disease," the priestess said, "seeing is believing. If you haven't seen it with your own eyes, how can you bet the future of the Eagle country on distant visitors?" Accompanied by several great witch priests, the priestess observed a group of seriously ill people who had just been cured, and then observed a group of healthy people who had been vaccinated against cowpox. While reading, he nodded slightly and muttered something. From time to time, she would flick those people with her long pointed nails. There was something there between the fingernails, like an invisible powder, or like a dark miasma, pounced on those people silently. What is she doing? In the spiritual connection, Cyrilla asked quietly. Gretel shook his head slightly. I'm testing whether these people will be harmed by the plague. It's okay. The position of her attack is relatively low, so she won't inhale it immediately. Just throw a cleaning spell. Waves of cleansing techniques passed by quietly. The priestess seemed unconscious and walked forward lightly. The waist is soft and curling, really like a snake sliding on the ground. Suddenly he turned back, raised his eyes slightly, and gave Gretel a meaningful smile. After reading it over and over, the priestess did not raise any questions, and just led the two golden eagle warriors, the great chiefs, the great witch priest, and Greed to sit down on the colorful seats in the temple. Her eyes flickered, she turned away from the guests, and she was the first to speak with a smile. Guest from afar, I admit that you have the power to resist the plague. I, Tidland, the high priest of the snake god, sincerely invite you to join us and fight against the white ghost and the plague girl. When she spoke, the two golden eagle warriors looked serious and said nothing. The chiefs of several tribes and the great witch priests also held their breaths and could not even hear the slightest cough. In the huge temple, apart from the clear voice of the female snake talking softly, the only sounds that could be heard were the whistling wind passing through the temple and the crisp crackling of torches on the temple walls. This is the situation. After speaking for about 5 minutes, the priestess concluded her statement. I hope you can join us and fight against our common enemy. Of course, this has indeed delayed your time and allowed you to take unnecessary risks. We will definitely give something back. Several chiefs and the great witch priests all breathed a silent sigh of relief. In particular, the chief of the Kestrel tribe, out of his obligation to protect the guests and out of righteous indignation, rushed forward and had a brilliant fight with the elite warriors. Now I stop and lean on the side to receive treatment from the Great Witch Festival, which is really a bit scary. These tribes will not completely obey the Eagle Kingdom, but they will provide convenience for small things. Now, if you push back directly like this, or even become directly hostile, what if the Eagle Kingdom really comes out in force? 12 golden eagle warriors and a number of female snakes that have always been a mystery are coming together. Their Kestrel tribe will be uprooted immediately. Thank God, everyone turned enemies into friends. Dozens of pairs of eyes stared at Gretel without blinking. Greed sat calmly, facing the priestess, with a smile on her lips. We are naturally hostile to the glorious Holy See, and there is no problem in resisting the common enemy. But before that, I also want to ask, do you have the authority to decide to form an alliance with me? How much authority do you have to decide the reward? There must be authority. The priestess smiled and did not answer. Next to her, the elderly golden eagle warrior bowed and explained. The power of the Eagle Country is jointly determined by 3 groups of people. One group is the Trotoani, which you can understand as the people who speak. One group is the Golden Eagle Warriors, who are the military leaders of the country. The other group is Snake Women, they are wise men and the country's internal policy guides. He bowed his head to the priestess respectfully. The priest of Tidland is a female snake. Her decision will naturally be recognized by the Eagle Kingdom. Gretel looked around. The chiefs and the great witch priests all nodded slightly to show that this was indeed the case. He did not continue to question, and with a wave of his hand, a vaccine was held by a floating dish and slid gently towards the priestess. First of all, I want to make it clear that these few of us are here to travel. It is impossible to confront the glory Holy See or the plague girl head on. We can only stand at the rear and work. However, I can give the soldiers the ability to not be afraid of the disease. That's all. The female snake's eyebrows moved slightly. Gretel's expression remained unchanged. Just rely on this. I knew how to use this powder to fight the smallpox that is currently ravaging all races. Many years ago, everyone in Nevis, the city of mages, and the people sent to the New World by the Kingdom of Kent used it. If you pass it, you will be free from smallpox for life. How much do you have? I still have a batch of samples in hand, enough for 50 people. This is not enough. The priestess shook her head very simply. We need at least 1 million, even if it is only used by the soldiers, we will need 200,000. Thank God, we finally have exact numbers on their strength. Greed secretly praised in his heart and decided to hide the other 2,000 for the time being. It was of no use anyway. If you want more, you need to contact the city of Mage and ask them to work hard to produce. By the way, I walked here from the east coast of the New World, running at full speed, for more than 10 days, across the ocean, at least 1.5 months one way, to produce 200,000 vaccines. He was still calculating whether it would take 3 months or half a year, but the priestess shook her head quickly. It's absolutely too late. When the weather gets warmer, the plague girl will come. Is there any other way? Then we have to study it here. I need enough resources to try and see if I can make it. The two sides haggled for a long time over the resources needed. It requires manpower, cattle, various materials for casting spells, and energy for casting spells. At the end of the discussion, the priestess raised her eyebrows, and the ends of her dark green eyes flashed with golden light again. How do I believe you can do it? You can only believe it. Gretel pointed to the vaccinia test tube in front of him, and then pointed to the patient in the distance. Or, you can urge your side to see if they have found the prisoner and ask if they can say anything. The priestess raised her eyebrows and looked at the other golden eagle warrior. The older golden eagle warrior raised a pair of small golden wings with his backhand. After a moment, the pair of golden wings levitated, flapped gently, and made a solemn and grand sound. Gret Nordmark, a 7th-level magician, the youngest son of the god of thunder. Among them, there is a nickname called Lord of Plague. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 947. Silence. There was silence. Deathly silence. As early as the golden wings floated in the air and made a sound, several visitors from the Eagle Kingdom had already turned around and bowed down. Hearing half of it, he froze at the same time. The female snake's enchanting figure was lying on the ground like a snake, with her head half raised, her neck standing there as if it had been petrified. With that arc, Greed felt that she needed to have a cervical spine adjustment at any time. The two golden eagle warriors knelt down on one knee, put their right hands on their chests, and bowed their heads deeply. On the left, the younger Tricus swayed and quickly supported the ground with his left hand. The older one on the right is holding on fairly well at first. When he heard Lord of the Plague, he turned around suddenly, then quickly turned back to face Golden Wing, and his spine made a clicking sound. Not to mention that the chief of the Kestrel tribe has bulging eyes, as wide as 2 small light bulbs. The great shaman of the Black Panther tribe had a rattling sound in his throat, but he couldn't even utter a single word. The great chief of the Bison tribe slowly opened his mouth, his lips opening and closing unconsciously, like a big fish out of water. Gretel guessed that he was either muttering Thunder God's youngest son or Plague Lord. The eyes of the various small and medium-sized tribes, chiefs, and great witch priests fell to the ground. After a long time of silence, Priestess Tidlin finally took a deep breath and lifted her petrified state. She turned around, restrained her charm for the first time, and bowed her head solemnly to Gretel. Put your hands on the ground and lean down gracefully. I was offended. I didn't expect that you are actually a son of God. Hello. Do not do that. I am really not the son of Thor. How on earth did you translate, from the holy sea of radiance to the kingdom of eagles and then to the long-distance transmission of spells, with 3 passers-by and 4 passers-by, translating the youngest disciple of the Lord of Thunder into the youngest son of the God of Thunder? If a translation of this level is sent to a publishing house, it will be sent back for revision. If the translation is not completed, it will not be reviewed. The youngest son of the God of Thunder, the youngest son of the God of Thunder, ha 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 ha. In the spiritual connection, Cyrilla couldn't stop laughing. Greet really doubted that if it hadn't been transmitted through the spiritual connection, she would have been able to laugh until she was out of breath on the spot. It's not necessarily true. The dragon's lung capacity is still very large, and she might be able to laugh for 10 minutes without stopping. A quick glance back revealed that Bernard's face was stiff and the corners of his mouth were twitching. Mr. Valensimo looked confused, his whole person exuding the aura of "Who am I? Where am I? What did I hear?" The indigenous boy Leighton stared at him with admiration, and stars could float out of his pupils. Although, this translation can't be said to be completely unreasonable. Gretel thought for a while, maybe the natives couldn't understand what Lord of Thunder, legendary mage meant, so it was directly translated as God of Thunder, and then the young apprentice became the youngest son? Well, as a legendary mage who has transcended mortals and can kill the demigods of the New World, or gods, it is not wrong to be called the God of Thunder. But, the youngest son of the God of Thunder, this is too much. I carry nothing of divinity with me. As he was complaining crazily in his heart, Gretel could only nod stiffly and make unintelligible and oh sounds. Then, quickly bring the topic back to its original position. So, can we continue to discuss cooperation plans? Okay, Lord Son of God. The priestess saluted meekly. She knelt on the ground upright, bowed her head, raised her head, straightened her back, and sat up straight. The entire spine undulates like a snake, which looks particularly pleasing to the eye. It really deserves the title of female snake. Gretel just wanted to cover her face. Just let this topic go, please. Stop calling me son of God. If this title is spread back to the kingdom of Kent, it will kill the community. Wait a minute. Next to the priestess, the young golden eagle warrior Trika suddenly interrupted. How do you prove that you are indeed the youngest son of the God of Thunder? Tlaka. This is the oracle. The priestess chided in surprise. Trika bowed his head and apologized, but his tone was unyielding. I'm sorry. Of course I don't dare to question the oracle, it's just that what we sent back was to ask about the identity of Gret Nordmark. But how do you prove that you are Gret Nordmark? Want to prove that I am myself? This is easier than proving my mother is my mother, especially when you have an ID card. Gretel wanted to touch the mage badge with his backhand, and he touched it with his hand, and was stunned on the spot. The prerequisite for the mage badge to be effective is that 2 mage badges are swiped against each other, and the information entered in the badges can appear, or if they are swiped on a specific machine in the mage tower, the information can appear. Who would touch a mage badge now? As you said, you have come from afar. Those who know you here and know your original identity are all your followers. The golden eagle warrior bowed slightly, his tone was solemn, and his expression was sincere. This cooperation is so important that we have to be extremely cautious. Sorry, apart from the narrative of you and your entourage, is there any way to prove that you are indeed the youngest son of the God of Thunder? I can't prove it. I am not the teacher's son, but his young apprentice. There is really no such thing as divinity in me. Gretel quickly turned his thoughts. Suddenly an idea flashed. He raised his hand and touched it casually. A bolt of lightning came out in response and turned into a palm-sized white cat, which landed silently in his palm. At first glance, The cat's body is silver white, but upon closer inspection, each hair is like a small lightning bolt, constantly jumping and stirring. Greet stretched out his hand to scratch its chin. The cat closed its eyes, raised its head and enjoyed it for a moment, rolling comfortably in his arms. There was silence in the huge temple. The chiefs and warriors were a little better. The priests, who were more sensitive to energy and mysterious power, stared at the silver kitten, each one's hair standing on end, and subconsciously held their breath. Gretel lowered his head and petted the cat. Once, twice, until Cyrilla became a little impatient and snatched the silver cat away, then he raised his head and asked with a smile. "Excuse me, does this count as proof?" "Certainly." The priestess nodded quickly. "No joke, that cat looks petite and light, but its body contains endless violent and destructive power. If those silver-white thunderbolts were released here, everyone in the temple would die. Who could restrain the power of thunder to this extent, and even give it wisdom, if not the god of thunder?" She reluctantly glanced at the kitten again. Cyrilla seemed to be aware of it and raised her head to glare at her. The priestess quickly averted her gaze, not daring to provoke the girl who ate the golden light as a snack, and said with a smile, "Dear Son of God, please forgive our ignorance." "No." Greet's vision went dark, and behind him, the laughter of Shishi and Shishi resounded again. "This wave is really going to kill the society. I hope this joke will not spread back to China, and I hope Mr. Baron Simo can keep it secret. It's a pity that he can't go back and tell his companions now." Not to mention admonitions, before she finished complaining, the priestess gave him another heavy blow. "May I ask, as the Lord of Plague, what is your relationship with the Plague Girl?" Puff. Behind him, Cyrilla couldn't help but laugh. Greet felt a tightness in his chest, and stars appeared in front of his eyes. Lord of Plagues, Lord of Plagues, Lord of Plagues is just a joking name. Joking? Don't bring me and the Plague Girl together. That kind of thing. Girl in black, the flies are the skirt, the mosquitoes are the streamers, the miasma is the makeup, the aboriginal fear of disease is condensed, the one who controls part of the plague power, I don't know if it is a totem god or some other demigod. Don't use it to compete with me. I have nothing to do with the Plague Girl, he replied solemnly. I was born, grew up, and became a magician in the kingdom of Kent. I came to the New World for the first time in my life. I just arrived here 3 days ago. I have never set foot in the area ruled by the Plague Girl. What do you think I have to do with her? You explain. Following his question, the silver kitten jumped up from Cyrilla's lap, jumped up, and landed on Gretel's shoulders. He raised his paw, waved it forward, and let out a small meow. Under the eyes and at the tips of the claws, electric light flashed. A faint stench instantly floated in the hall. Lord Son of God, please don't be angry. The priestess fell down again in panic. Stretch your hands forward, press your forehead on the ground, and say softly. We don't mean to offend, we just want to know if you have some power over the plague, and whether you can take these powers away from the Plague Girl. Gretel sighed. He raised his hand slightly, wanting to rub his forehead, but finally put it down. Lord of Plagues is a joking term, which means that I have gone one step further in researching plagues than others. In fact, the main directions of my research are why plagues occur, how to block infections, and these disease prevention and treatment. He thought for a while, touched the space bag again, and took out a stack of journals from it. He opened the pages one by one, put them on the floating saucer, and pushed them towards the priestess. Mainly these papers. Because I had done such research, the elders jokingly said it once, and it spread around, and it became this nickname. The priestess looked up, her eyes confused. As for the 2 golden eagle warriors next to them, as well as several high priests further away, they even subconsciously leaned back to avoid the floating saucer. On the one hand, I was afraid, but on the other hand, I was eager to try. Gretel has seen several people put their palms down and lift them up and put them down, trying to grab a book or tear out a page. Is this your reward? Affix it to the plague maiden, or burn it in front of her, and take away her power. Gretel quickly recalled the floating saucer. With a wave of his hand, all the journals were stuffed back into the space bag and would never be released. This is just a paper. A paper. It's the research results I wrote. If we really want to stop the spread of the plague, we rely on these things. He pointed to the cowpox vaccine beside the priestess. To mass produce, I can't do it alone, I need many assistants. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 948. Chapter 945, Hand over all outsiders to the Son of Thunder God, except the strong sea monster will be rewarded with 10,000 rewards. Gretel's wishful thinking was like a ping-pong. Under the pretext that manpower is needed to produce vaccines, all people from the Kingdom of Kent in the Eagle Kingdom must come out. If that doesn't work, we have to get all the magicians out. Well, in this case, wouldn't Brother Lin En escape successfully? There is no need to hit the door head-on. If they really fight, the other party will use Brother Lin En as a hostage, but their hands are tied. Unfortunately, it backfired. Strictly speaking, it's not that things go against your wishes, but it hits the cotton with a punch. The priestess did not notice his statement, but looked at his space bag eagerly. To be precise, I looked at the direction in which those papers disappeared, with a sad face. Hey, she seems to really believe that if these papers are posted on the plague girl, she can kill her. In the spiritual connection, Cyrilla said with a smile. Greet's head is full of black lines. Don't make trouble. What did she think this paper was? Is it the talisman drawn by Master Zhang, or the talisman revealed by Tathagata Buddha? That shiny golden post with the 6 characters Om, Ma, Ni, Ba, Me, Hung written on it will cause the whole mountain to take root and crack. Can it suppress the great sage Kishan underneath? Look at my head, does it look like it's smooth without a single hair, or does it look like it's full of lumps, all filled with sarcoma? Sir Son of God, can you please put these. The priestess stared closely at the place where the paper disappeared, made a gesture, and organized the words with difficulty. Bring us a copy? Although I can't understand it, there are older wise men in the City of Mountains, as well as omnipotent eagle gods and snake gods. Greet thought about it and realized that it was not impossible. Just like working on a project with others, you must always give a copy of the project plan and related materials no matter what. Besides, there is no need to give the original copy. Isn't this the art of copying? The only problem is, it seems that he didn't bring enough paper. He stretched out his hand forward and spread his palms flatly upward. Bring it here. What? Paper. Otherwise. What do you use to copy text and record important news? The priestess opened and closed her lips, as if she didn't know what to say, and made a few gestures feebly. On the right, the great witch priest of the Kestrel tribe leaned back slightly and whispered a few instructions. His disciple ran out in a hurry, and after a while, he came in holding a large piece of stuff. Dear Son of God, this is. Gretel no longer had the energy to complain about the title Lord Son of God. His eyes drooped, looking down at the items held in front of him by the young wizard priest's hands. At first glance, it looks like a brick, but when you look closely, it is still a brick with a pattern. The pattern is quite regular. Clay tablets? He asked hopelessly. The priestess nodded first, then shook her head. It's different from what we use, they burned it, but what we use is dried in the sun. Greet's vision went dark. He really didn't mean to discriminate against clay tablets. After all, in human history, clay tablets were used in Mesopotamia, Crete, Mycenae and other places in Greece, including the Aztec civilization, Mayan civilization, or Inca civilization in South America. The problem is, the shortest of his papers are 5,000 to 6,000 words, and the longer ones are tens of thousands of words. Do you want to copy them all on clay tablets? Not to mention whether there are enough clay tablets, even if there are, how are you going to take them back? Tow it with a truck? While he was cursing, there was already a crisp sound of pop inside the temple. The great witch priest of the Kestrel tribe raised his arm and slapped his young apprentice on the back of the head. What are you doing standing around? Why don't you go prepare the clay tablets? Yes, yes. With a crash, a group of young wizard priests swarmed out. While running, he was still shouting. Hurry up, hurry up. Call everyone here. Call all the soldiers. Making clay tablets is not an easy job. We need a lot of clay tablets. A lot? What? I don't know how many we need. We can do as many as we can. These are the only wooden frames for making clay tablets? Hurry up and cut them down, idiot. Do you have to wait for me to say this? For a moment, the sound of dredging, pouring water, and the sound of rammed earth chants of Hangyo rang out outside the temple. Greet closed her eyes in pain. He forced himself to ignore the noise outside. Of course, he also ignored the fact that Miss Silver Dragon was ha 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 in the spiritual connection, and said sternly, I will briefly talk about what I am going to do, how to protect more than 200,000 people from smallpox. The first method is to copy as many of these powders as possible. He pointed to the test tube containing the cowpox vaccine in front of the priestess. He casually took out a piece of paper, rolled up the endless ink pen on the oak stick and automatically stretched out his pocket, recording. In my hometown, these medicinal powders are planted on the bodies of cattle to let them grow as much as possible and produce more of the same kind. However, the types of cattle here are different and their strength levels are also different. Can these medicinal powders grow? I'm not sure. The priestess looked down at the tube of powder, her expression solemn but confused, like a poor student who was struggling to memorize in an advanced mathematics class, hoping to pass the final. Greet paused for a moment. After giving her a little time to memorize, he continued. If it cannot reproduce in cattle, we must use other things as a carrier for the replication of this drug, for example, E. coli, or other bacteria. To do this, I need someone to help me prepare the breeding foundation, ensure constant temperature and humidity in the pharmacy, and keep records. I need at least 10 people, all of whom must be literate and able to write, preferably spellcasters. The rich lips of the priestess, covered with gold powder, opened and closed and opened again, as if she wanted to say something but had no idea where to start. Gretel sighed. If these two methods fail, the only option is to take the pathogens directly from the patient and reduce their ferocity. For this, I need a spellcaster with rich experience in growth and reproduction, especially plague, as an assistant. Direct reproduction, indirect reproduction, attenuated vaccines. After explaining the two technical routes and three methods in one breath, the beautiful face of the priestess was completely stiff, and even the gold powder in the dark green eyeshadow stopped flickering. As for the two golden eagle warriors next to them, their eyes are watching their noses are watching their mouths, and their mouths are watching their hearts. They are like COS 123 idiots there. After all, their mission is to fight, and this kind of work that requires thinking has never anything to do with them. They don't seem to understand. In the spiritual connection, Cyrilla said with a smile. I really don't understand. These paragraphs seem simple. It is really impossible for people without any knowledge of vaccine manufacturing to understand, so why are you gloating like this? Are you so happy when you find that they don't understand? Greet complained silently, and with a wave of his hand, the recording paper floated to the opposite side. Take this piece of paper and go back and present it to your gods, wise men, or anyone else. In short, I need assistance, and as many assistants as possible. He reached out to recall the floating dish and stuffed it back under his butt so that he could sit more comfortably. You have to be literate, you have to be able to write, and it's best to have the ability to cast spells. By the way, don't be the white ghosts who come to attack you and get caught by you. Those people who cause trouble will delay my progress. It would be best if there are spellcasters who are good at plague and death. Aren't you going to the Eagle Country? The priestess's eyes widened in surprise. The thick black eyelashes were slightly raised, and the water in the pupils was slightly rippling, reflecting only Gretel's shadow. With your identity and what you want to do, come to our place, and we will definitely treat you as a distinguished guest. If you need someone, you need something. Bring the assistance you need to cross the territory of the plague girl, many people will die. She is so pitiful and cute, with her whole heart and soul focused on a certain person, that even a strong man will feel soft after seeing her. However, Gretel only had brother Lin who was in danger in her heart, and turned a blind eye to her gesture, with a heart of stone. I won't go. There are people here, there are cattle, and most importantly, I can start working right away. If I go with you, if there are any shortcomings, can I turn back? The priestess tried to persuade her, but she couldn't do it. She didn't dare to use force, so she could only bid farewell to the Golden Eagle warriors in dismay. As for the papers, she wanted to take them back, but with the art of copying, it was impossible to leave words on the clay tablets. Blinded in vain, the young witch priests and their subordinate warriors poured water and mud, and finally produced a dozen clay tablets. Greet was extremely cooperative and took it upon himself to copy on the clay tablets. However, after copying a full clay tablet, less than 1/10 of the paper was completed. Obviously, copying all the papers and taking them back has exceeded their loading capacity. The priestess reluctantly left. They bypassed the plague girl's territory, returned all the way, and directly reported the latest harvest. The top management paid great attention to it. The leader of the Golden Eagle warrior and the leader of the female snake immediately took a vaccine each and prayed to the gods respectively. This stuff works. It does work. At the southernmost end of Huanquan Avenue, in the solemn and majestic temple hall, Troto Ani, the speaker, the Golden Eagle warrior and the female snake, sat in their respective positions according to their positions. The two leaders each reported the results, and then Troto Ani nodded and concluded his speech. If it's useful, then use it. Chiwakato. He turned to the leader of the female snakes, that is, the woman who can be directly called the female snake without any modification. Chiwakoto originally means female snake. Search for all the outsiders in the city, whether they are caught, traveling, or doing business. Gather them all and send them to Titlan. Chiwakoto responded with a smile. For a time, the city was in a frenzy and people were arrested everywhere. In the prison under the pyramid, the sound of shaking chains and the opening of the prison door continued to be heard. The female snakes and the lower-level priestesses shuttled in the corridors, constantly giving instructions and asking the jailers to drag people from the prison. Come out! Come out! What to do? The time has come to serve the Eagle Nation. The people who were suddenly able to see the light of day burst into tears of joy. The business was going well, and the people who were suddenly taken away desperately resisted and begged for help. In the midst of the chaos, the priestess Nilda was furious and went straight to the upper level of the pyramid. Teacher! She pushed the door open violently, and before she could salute, she shouted loudly. The person I locked up can't be let go. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of Thanks to Zhongbo Yang for the 4,500 starting coins. Book friends who use the Apple mobile phone must log in to the web page to reward, and use the Apple mobile phone directly to reward. Apple will deduct a large part, and the account will arrive 3 months late. Woo woo. Thanks to Fengxin Yunnan Road for the 100 starting coin reward. Thanks Mabai for the 100 reading points. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Jialan 2020. Chapter 949. The thick stone door is silent, and the illusory aperture condenses into reality. What answered Nilka was not a human voice, but a melodious melody. Woo! Nilka stood suddenly. He lowered his face, lowered his head, folded his hands in front of his abdomen, and remained motionless. There was darkness at the end of the stone room, with only a little phosphorescence floating around. A woman with a slender waist sat with her back. If you look closely, the phosphorescence is all at the ends of her hair, the large and small snake eyes that open and close, and the hissing snake messages. In the dark room, just taking a look at it will make people feel chilly for no reason. The woman held a long pipe-like instrument in both hands and played leisurely. As the music swirled, her long hair also raised its head, circled, fell, and moved in waves, just like the dance of 10,000 snakes. After playing a piece of music, the snake's hair slowly fell down his shoulders. She took another tambourine, beat it gently, and sang softly. Are there flowers blooming and falling in the underworld on the other side? In the afterlife, will we be dead or alive? Like pictures, we will be wiped away, like flowers, we will eventually dry up. Note 1. Nilka stood silently with bated breath, the snake heads in her hair and the pearls on her arms were all frozen in place, not daring to make any sound. It wasn't until the song ended that she walked forward in small steps and said respectfully, "Teacher." "What is it, Nilka?" The woman put down her tambourine, turned around and looked up. The face revealed under the faint phosphorescent light was none other than Chiwakoto, who was conferring with the leaders in the great temple. Her appearance was ordinary, it could even be said that her outline was flat and her vitality and blood were dry, which would not have been noticeable even if she was thrown into the pile of female slaves under the tower. However, the three-color runes of golden, dark black, and bright red flying sideways at the end of her eyes add infinite mystery and majesty to her. At a glance, she cannot look hard. Nilka carried a heart, carefully stepped forward, and knelt down in front of the teacher. She lowered her head, put her forehead on the teacher's knee, and whispered, "Teacher, the necromancer I captured, can you not hand it over?" "Nilka." Chiwakoto called the student's name calmly. Feeling the body on her knees trembling, she said softly, "Snakes shed their skin again and again, constantly moving from death to rebirth. And we female snakes, like the snake god, walk on the boundary between life and death, becoming the bridge between this world and the other side. You are my most qualified disciple." She raised her hand and stroked Nilka's hair. The long black hair was quiet under her hands, the snake's eyes were closed, the snake remained silent, and the ends were not enlarged, just like the hair of an ordinary girl. Although we have returned from death and relied on divine power to survive forever, we will eventually fall into death. My time is running out. Among the 7 female snakes, you, the one who retains the most vitality, will one day succeed Chiwakoto's position. Teacher. Nilka shouted shakily. Chiwakoto, the leader of the snake god priests who had forgotten his name and was named Female Snake, stroked the female disciple's long hair again and said slowly, "The man you left behind is also a person who walks between life and death and explores the mysteries of death. It is natural for you to be attracted to him, so I will let you go. As a female snake, I am just a man, it doesn't matter. Can't afford to keep it? But not now. At this point, Shivakato lowered his head slightly, lifted his student's chin with his long pointed nails, and forced her to look at him. Nilka, we need help to deal with the alliance between the Plague Girl and the White Ghost. The Oracle has recognized that the youngest son of the God of Thunder, the Lord of Plague, can protect our compatriots from the plague. Now, it is not your will. When? But teacher, Nilka raised her head unconvinced. I have a hunch that the Lord of the Plague is here for the necromancer. What if we hand the person over to him and he just runs away? By then, the disease will be unavoidable, and the necromancer will be gone, and everything will be in vain. Then you go and verify it. Chiwakoto lowered his eyebrows and said calmly. Just relying on conjecture, what's the use of coming to me to ask? Nilka, I allow you to see the necromancer, to verify, to make lies, but you are not allowed to use punishment. Once you have confirmed information, you can come to see me again. Thank you, teacher. Nilka said happily. With the teacher's permission, her steps became much more brisk, and her clothes carried the wind, gliding quietly in the stone corridor. The middle-level priestesses along the way met her head-on. They all stepped aside and bowed their heads in salute. Lord Nilka. Nilka the snake. Groan UPS. Nilka nodded to them reservedly and glided past them quickly. Down, down, into the dense dungeon on the 5th floor underground. Close your eyes, slowly adjust your breathing, and then enter through the stone wall as usual. Under the oil lamp, the necromancer was sitting upright on the stone bed as usual. His fingertips traced back and forth on the edge of the stone bed, his lips opened and closed, and he muttered words. White lines have been drawn on the edge of the stone bed. It's unknown how many times his nails have been smoothed and his fingertips have been scratched several times. After not seeing the light of day for half a year, the muscles on his face and hands were already pale. However, the cheeks seem to be slightly plumper, and are no longer so thin and sunken as before. Master Lin En. Nilda called softly. The black-robed necromancer said coldly without raising his head. SHH. I just reached a critical point. Don't bother me. Nilda pouted, but she was used to this kind of treatment, and sat down on the stone bench opposite with a smile. She watched Lin En's calculations intently for a while, then suddenly asked. Who is the Plague Lord? Lin, cough 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 dash. He was so frightened that he choked a mouthful of water into his trachea, touched his chest and started coughing. He was hunched over, coughing until tears came to his eyes, and Nilda didn't even bother to sit next to him and pat his back gently. Cough 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 cough. Cough 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 cough. After coughing for a long time, Lin En finally took a breath and wiped the tears from the corners of his eyes. He calmed down, moved as hard as he could to the edge of the wall, and faced Nilda. Why do you ask? What do you think? Nilda's eyes wandered, staring at him with joy. Lin En took a long breath, calmed down, and said to her seriously. He is a very powerful magician. He is very accomplished in studying how to control, block, and eliminate plague. I have only heard of this. Why do you suddenly ask about this? He broke into the Eagle Kingdom and wanted to enter the pyramid, but we caught him. Nilda smiled mysteriously. My teacher tortured him personally and used divine power to make him tell the truth. He said that he is the youngest son of the God of Thunder, the Lord of Plague, and he came to save you. For a moment, Lin's heart started beating wildly. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Note 1. Poems written by Nezahualcoyotl, the founder of Mesoamerican thought. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Giolan 2020. Chapter 950. Bang bang, bang bang, bang bang. His heart beat wildly against his chest. Lin En had to clench her fists and resist the urge to raise her hand to press on her heart. The outside of the heart is wrapped by the heart, the front of the pericardium is covered by the lungs and pleura, and further forward are the ribs. The pericardium and the diaphragm below are connected together, which is equivalent to being fixed on the diaphragm, and will not jump around, sway. You won't hit your ribs while jumping. No need to press it, it's useless if you press it. He had personally dissected more than one corpse in Black Crow Swamp, and he could see it clearly. Lin took a deep breath, raised his head, and looked directly at Nilka. He forced himself to ignore the other party's beautiful appearance, face covered with gold powder, and mysterious and alluring charms. He stared into the depths of her pupils and said in a cold voice. Besides him, who else did you catch? We also caught many people, Nilka smiled happily on one side of her face. I also caught an elf girl with beautiful, shiny white hair. A particularly arrogant big man carrying a big stick. There is also a warrior carrying 2 swords. Lin couldn't help but laugh. The big man, referring to Bernard. I don't know who the dual-sword warrior is, but Gretel has come a long way, so he probably needs a guide. The important thing is, want to catch Cyrilla? Sarah would be so obedient that she would fight you directly without taking on her dragon form? When he set out to travel, Cyrilla was just about to go to sleep, and would appear next to Gretel in the new world. Anyway, he had successfully advanced. You are lying. Lin leaned back and crossed his arms comfortably, ignoring the rattling of the chains on his wrists. He leaned his head back against the stone wall, curled up the corners of his mouth, and smiled confidently and contemptuously. Nilka was not annoyed, she just raised her eyebrows curiously. Oh. That Nordmark mage belongs to Thunderhorn, Lin said coldly. The nickname Lord of the Plague was given as a joke by Black Crow Swamp. He would never call himself this. I don't know where I heard a few words from, and you want to lie to me. Nilka smiled brightly. She moved closer to Lin En again, pursed her lips, and blew a warm breath into his ear. Are you nervous? Just now, your heartbeat was so fast. You know them, right? That Nordmark mage is here for you, right? That's why he was nervous just now. Greet came, and he rushed over without any detours or delays, and, according to this female snake, he didn't bring any strong people with him. Not even the Lord of Thunder, His Excellency the Immortal, not even Gretel's 17th and 18th level senior brothers and sisters, but none of them. It's a secret, he must not rush over stupidly. In the land of eagles, a single legend may not be able to escape even if he only relies on strength. Of course, he could only worry about these things secretly and never let any of them appear to the public. Lin En said calmly. I just know him as a person. What does that Nordmark mage want to do, where is he going, what does it have to do with me, and how do I know about it? Oh. Nilka smiled meaningfully. She trusts her own perception more than words. The heartbeat speeds up, the breathing speeds up, the body surface temperature rises, and an inexplicable odor can be smelled. There must be something wrong. The Lord of Plague is here for the necromancer in front of him. Seeing Lin En's stubborn words, she stopped asking questions, smiled, got up and left. Just asking, a lot of information has been revealed. Now. I don't believe you can bear not to ask. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. The priestess's feet were even and steady, and with a strange rhythm, she slowly walked out. Well, Lin's heartbeat was faster and her breathing was a little faster. It seemed that she was indeed very nervous and concerned. She was not wrong. This kind of pace and rhythm that combines guidance, charm, and oppression, as well as the hidden spell-casting methods, she really did not practice in vain. Very effective. On the stone bed, Lin An tried hard to turn his head and collect his thoughts. Don't think, don't ask, don't show any concern or nervousness. Any flaw on his part will be used against Gretel, putting Gretel in danger. Think of something else. Think of something else. Just now, before the female snake arrived, how far had he calculated the rune data? Nilka's steps became slower and slower, slower and slower. The stone door was already rippled and was about to open to her, but the necromancer behind it was still silent. She quickly made a fingerprint, and a smooth and flat oval lit up on the stone door. She looked back. A surge of anger shot straight to the top of his head. Lin An's eyes were fixed, and his fingertips were scratching back and forth on the stone bed. It was obvious that he was calculating something again. She paused. Without looking back, he simply said, "You really don't want to know why I came to ask you these questions?" Not interested, Lin An said without raising her head. Don't bother me. If the vertex is at the origin, the directrix is a parabola, its cone equation should be. The voice gradually became softer and lower, and gradually became silent, as if he was obsessed with calculation and had no time to care about anything else. Nilka stood at the door for a while, then quickly turned back and waved her hand in front of him. Okay, don't forget it. Let me ask you a question. Put the poisonous gas of the disease on the cow, let the cow get the disease, and then use the things that grow on the cow to make people resist the disease. What would you do? In the stone room, Lin An suddenly raised his head, his eyes bright. This statement. Although it was stumbling and difficult to explain, and I didn't know there were a few mistakes when it was relayed, it was obvious that this was how to make cowpox. And cowpox will be produced in large quantities on this land. Now Gretel is not rushing in to save people, but is cooperating with the Eagle Country. Moreover, there is a high probability that the Eagle Country needs him. Thoughts raced through my mind. He leaned against the stone wall, raised his face resolutely, and smiled calmly. I see. Is there a large-scale epidemic of smallpox in your country? This disease is very dangerous. If it spreads in our country, with bad luck, 1/10 of the people in a city will die. In your words, 1/3 more than one, right? Why? The young female snake blurted out. He immediately fell silent as soon as he uttered half a sentence. They are okay here. Relying on treatment and killing at any cost, they can barely keep the disease girl at a distance and do not invade the capital. However, in the villages under the mountain, the poor people in the distance, and the tribes further west, on the west side of the plague girl's territory, I heard that half of them are dead, and some are completely dead. People in our city always had several waves of the disease intermittently when they were young. So every time there is an outbreak, there are always some people who have already had this disease and will not get it again. Lin calmly conveyed the knowledge about the plague branch and some knowledge he heard from Gretel. But as you say, you have never seen anything like this in hundreds or thousands of years. If it breaks out all of a sudden, you won't be able to resist it, and you will die in large numbers. Stop talking like this. Nilka's voice suddenly became sharp, and her black hair also grew thicker, and the snake hissed, filling the cell. She raised her arm, took off a piece of thick leather from her skirt, and threw it on Lin's body. Look at these things. Do you know how to do them? As long as there is one thing that can be done, I will immediately report to the teacher and let you out as a guest of honor. From now on, you no longer have to worry about becoming a sacrifice. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, and ask for all kinds of things. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right. Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 951. The moment the leather appeared, Lin quickly lowered his head and tried to hold back a smile. 1. Obviously, the other party was more nervous than him and had to take the initiative to lower his head. Lin En was only happy for a moment, and immediately focused on the animal skin. Can't be happy, can't relax, can't think too much. This female snake has a strange ability to directly sense subtle changes in others, probably due to the super strong sense of smell and hearing brought by the snake god. As long as she notices the slightest difference, the subsequent contest will have to start again. Reached the original position. Being in a prison with no information from the outside, he had to try his best to seize even the slightest advantage. He looked down at the hide. On the heavy and stiff leather, there are large letters written with ochre paint. At a glance, it gives the illusion of dripping blood. Lin En curled her lips secretly. The level of Eagle Country is too low. Look at the paint. It has uneven shades. Look at the strokes. They are thick or thin. There are scattered ink dots next to them. Look at the writing. It is crooked and pauses from time to time. You are completely illiterate, so you followed the original manuscript and traced it as if it were a picture. After just 2 glances, he threw the animal skin back. He held his head high and kept a straight face, neither looking at the hide nor Nilka's face. I want to see the original. What? I want to see the original. Lin En glanced at the animal skins on the ground from the corner of his eyes, his expression and behavior full of contempt. I didn't copy it correctly, there were mistakes in several places. What can I tell with a text full of errors? Nilka froze on the spot, her arms trembling slightly, and her silver teeth shattered. If you want to hit, you can't bear it, if you want to scold, you can't. After staying for a long time, he waved his hand and a stream of colorful ribbons flew up from his fingertips, rolled up the leather and left. The thick stone wall turned into ripples, welcoming the priestess out, and turned back into the cold stone wall again. Lin En stared at the patterns on the stone wall for a long time, then suddenly sighed and lowered his head. Unexpectedly, it still alerted Greet. This little guy who only knows how to spend time in laboratories and hospitals, rarely goes to the battlefield, and doesn't know how to fight with anyone, is the youngest disciple of the Lord of Thunder. He has been firing arcane and magic continuously since the first level. He has a bright future. Young magician. He actually traveled thousands of miles, crossed seas and mountains, and rushed to the eastern part of the New World just for him. Leaving behind the safe research environment and the luxurious city life, he went deep into dangerous areas just to save his life. Gretel, Gretel. It doesn't matter whether I survive or not, you must not let anything happen to you. You are the future legendary seed, the future legendary mage of the medical system that the entire council has high hopes for. He lowered his head and closed his eyes as scenes from the past flashed through his mind. When Gretel was dueling with others, he was clumsy and had poor timing when throwing blessings and protective spells. Greet accepted Bernard's combat training, ran 2 laps, and then started to act lazy. Gretel desperately stuffed things into his space bag, fearing that he would run out of food and water and starve and suffer in the new world. After a long silence, he let out a long sigh. At least Greet is safe now. Instead of rushing in, he is cooperating with the Eagle Country on vaccines. I just took a quick glance and saw that what was written on that piece of leather was about how to make cowpox. The first method is okay, but the difficulty is just how to get the herd of cattle, and how to subdue these bison. The third method, Plague Branch, is used by many people, but very few have achieved results. It seems that there are still many technical difficulties. As for the second one, fall. He has no idea at all. If he does this with Greet, he can still manage to do it a little bit. If he does it by himself, he can keep the bacteria alive and rely on the lessons he took in Greet's laboratory. As for how to use bacteria to propagate cowpox. Can bacteria reproduce cowpox? Could it be that you are coaxing me? Lin racked his brains, and racked his brains again and again, but he had no knowledge reserve in this area, and he couldn't get it out no matter how hard he racked his brains. After thinking for a long time, he suddenly laughed out loud. The Lord of the Plague, ha 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 ha, the youngest son of the God of Thunder, ha 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 ha. I really want to see Gretel's face at that time, when he was called these two nicknames in front of his face. His expression must be very exciting, haha. After thinking about it for a while, Lin En recovered his mind and deduced the situation in front of him. Gretel couldn't do these plans alone, nor could the few people around him. Gretel threw these things out, and there was a high probability that he wanted to ask for people from the Eagle Country. Want an assistant, need a helper, take the opportunity to rescue him. So, the best cooperation he can do is. First of all, one must never admit that Gretel came to save him. Otherwise, the other party will use him to blackmail Gretel. At least, they will ask Gretel to come to the Eagle Country and be surrounded by them. Just as he was thinking of this, the stone door disappeared silently, and Nilka walked in with a cold face again. Raising his hand, the recording paper landed lightly in front of Lin En. This is the original. Lin En held it up and looked at it carefully without saying a word. The paper I started with was pure white and smooth paper, with dark blue horizontal lines on it, thin and even, with equal spacing. It was the recording paper specially provided by the Parliament and purchased by the Mage Tower at a low price based on its level. It is very useful for writing experimental reports, writing records, and drafting papers. Of course, there are also some people who have magic potions in their brains and just use it to write love letters. It is conceivable that he died miserably. What Lin En had in his hand was an outline of the experimental plan, with smooth handwriting and clear ideas. With just a brief glance, he saw the words at the end of each plan. We need a large number of assistants who are good at caring for animals. We need more than 10 assistants who can read and write. Spellcasters experienced in growth, reproduction, especially plague are needed as assistants. Lin took a deep breath and raised his head. The dry and thin face was still stiff, with no expression at all, and his tone was indifferent. I don't know how to do it. Although I am a necromancer, I am not from the plague branch. I work under the guidance of others. It's okay to be an assistant. If I am asked to take the lead, I can't do it. The priestess stared at him viciously. There's nothing wrong with her eyes, her heartbeat is okay, and her smell is okay. This person didn't lie. She took a step forward and said in a cold voice. Think before you speak. If you really can't do it, you're useless. Hell, this paper was asked for from Tidland. After passing the third person, the secret could no longer be kept. Lin En's life and death, and even whether she should hand him over or use him as a sacrifice, were not hers to decide alone. Although the teacher loves her, some things must be done according to the rules. If you can't do it, you just can't do it. Lin En spread his hands indifferently, and the chain on his wrist made a loud noise. I am a necromancer, but I am not from the plague branch. There is no problem in spreading the plague. How to reduce its power and how to prevent people from being invaded, I don't understand at all. Very good. Nilka nodded vigorously, turned around and left. Early the next morning, a dozen travelers were escorted by a female snake and 2 golden eagle warriors. They left the Eagle Kingdom and walked toward the bottom of the plateau. After traveling far around the territory of the Plague Girl and trudging for many days, it was finally delivered to Gretel. Dear Son of God, we have sent you the assistant you asked for. Tidland smiled softly and respectfully. When can we take the first batch of medicines back? Greet smiled at her. Scanning quickly, my heart suddenly sank. No, Lin. Among these assistants who were in ragged clothes and shivering, there was only one person who he came thousands of miles away to rescue. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Thanks to @Yamengbing for the 1000 starting coins. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Jialan 2020. Chapter 952. The people standing in front of Greet were in one row, 8 in the front, and 9 in the back. Tall, short, some thin, not fat. All of them were disgraced and covered in mud. It seems that these people have suffered a lot after traveling from the Eagle country. But that's not what Gretel cares about. He looked at them one by one carefully, making sure that there was no Brother Lin En, nor was there any image of Brother Lin En, that might be deformed. There is no problem with the origin. People who came from the old world look very different from the natives of the new world. You can tell at a glance. Gretel sighed in disappointment and looked at the silver dragon girl. Sarala, please do me a favor. Register them one by one, including their name, age, past occupation, whether they are literate, whether they can write, and whether they have other skills. Check it all out, and I will arrange jobs for them. No problem. Leave it to me. Sarala's sympathy has long been overflowing. She flicked her fingers, and white light loomed on her fingertips. She wished she could treat these poor people. It was so miserable. There were bloody wounds everywhere on the face, hands, and legs, and several people had suppuration. Greet watched her go away with a smile. With a flick of his fingers, an ethereal line connected directly from his body to Valensimo's body. In the spiritual connection, Gretel whispered. They didn't bring Lin come here and negotiate with me. No problem, boss. Greet breathed a sigh of relief. Logically speaking, these newly arrived assistants should be left to Valenchimo to arrange. Sarala has a high level and strong healing power, so she should work with him in the laboratory. The bard has strong communication skills. He can handle things like where a group of 17 people will eat, where they will live, where they will bathe, who to ask for a change of clothes, and so on. Gretel just wants to make friends and doesn't have to worry about it at all. But now, negotiation ability is what Greet needs most. Although he had rich experience in talking to patients' families in his previous life, after traveling through many years, he had degenerated to the point of being a bit socially anxious. In other words, his essence was actually a bit socially anxious. Which medical student's dream when starting out is to explain the situation to the patient and the patient's family, rack their brains, and fight wits and courage, just to get the patient to cooperate well with the treatment, and by the way, pay well and avoid medical trouble. After having a round of talks with the priestesses, Gretel had already exhausted all his might to get more than a dozen assistants from them. If he wants to fight again and get Lin out, he has decided that he is beyond his capabilities and needs to call for off-field assistance. Of course, he still had to do the first round of negotiations by himself. With a smile on his face, Gretel first thanked the Tidlin priest and the 2 Golden Eagle warriors for their hard work, and then took out 10 small boxes, each box filled with 50 test tubes. This is the latest achievement. It's not much. It's only enough for 500 people. There are really too few people who can do the work. Priest Tidlin's eyes brightened and then dimmed immediately. She stared at the smooth and shiny boxes in the shape of a pyramid and lost her voice. Only 500 people? It's been almost a month, why are there only so few? What is this little enough for? In addition to the 12 golden eagles and the 7 female snakes, all the white eagle warriors, black eagle warriors, mid-level and low-level priestesses, all come together, 200 is far from enough. Not to mention, there are the families of the warriors and priests, the slaves at home, and the maids. And those low-level warriors, farmers, craftsmen. At least 200,000 pieces, no less. Then, these assistants are here now, she asked in a low voice with a glimmer of hope. Can you make more? I can stay here for a longer period of time, for example, for 5 more days, and give me another 10,000. Can you do that? Gretel shook his head with a heavy expression. Behind him, Mr. Valensimo sighed and explained for his boss. These people are only low-level professionals of the second and third levels at most. They are neither necromancers nor healers. I don't know how many of them can write or calculate. In addition to moving things and recording numbers, they can also help the boss. How busy is it? Do you need treatment and the direction of the undead? Before setting off, Priest Tidlin had already studied this issue with the female snakes and made a plan. At this moment, his face was full of worry, and he asked eagerly. We female snakes are spiritual beings who rely on the power of the snake god to walk between life and death. Lord Son of God, if you need the power of death and healing, maybe I can help. Gretel was helpless and stood up to take her out. For his research needs, the Kestrel tribe's gathering place gave him a place as a research laboratory. The cell chamber is above the mound, the cattle shed. At the other end of the square under the 4-story mound, behind a bowl-shaped mound, a row of sheds was built, and the braying of cows came one after another. Opening the door curtain, each bison has been shaved of its long hair. Gretel casually approached a bison, summoned the illumination spell, and took a closer look. There are a series of large and small blisters on the back, ribs, and abdomen of the bison. He nodded with satisfaction. These are the blisters, they look good. Madam, you see, by inserting the contents of these blisters into the human body, one can be protected from smallpox. But there are too few of them. Could you do me a favor and let them? How long does this blister take to spread all over the bison's body? The priestess stepped forward lightly, took a look, and then whispered a prayer. After praying a few words, he raised his hand and a faint black light came out, wiping across the back of the bison. The black light was everywhere, and the blisters spread, and kept spreading. Moo! The buffalo's hooves gave way and fell down. Before Greet could finish shouting wait, he could only stop sadly, facing the fact that the bison had fallen. He quickly stepped forward, leaned over to check, and saw that the bison's body was covered in ulcers, its skin was yellow and white, and pink foam was spraying from its nose. I mean, just let the blisters grow longer, don't trigger other plagues. Tidlin smiled sheepishly, selected the second cow, prayed again, and wiped out the black light again. At the same time, Mr. Valensimo grabbed a golden eagle warrior outside, took out 2 bottles of wine, blew 1 bottle himself, and asked in a low voice. Is there no one else? Is this all what I sent this time? Certainly. The golden eagle warrior was not one of the 2 who came last time, and he did not recognize Valensimo. However, the feeling of being a high-level warrior prevented him from keeping a cold face. And, after the other party finished drinking a bottle, he accepted the gift. He uncorked the bottle and shot a golden light into it. Seeing that there was no reaction inside, he took a big sip. Ha! He exhaled forcefully and made an appreciative gesture to Valentino. Then he whispered. How could it not be all of them? In order to make up the number of people, we went up and down, even scraping the white ghost prisoners. We actually found a few who were said to have been captured by them after the boat drifted over there. Valensimo patiently listened to his rants, nodding and smiling from time to time, and handed over a bottle of wine. Well, thanks to the generosity of the boss, this charming humanity ring cannot be obtained for 1,000 gold coins. The golden eagle warrior gurgled, and drank several bottles in a row. Valensimo waited until his face started to turn red, then quickly glanced into the shed. Then you have worked really hard. By the way, have you looked for the female snakes as well? It is said that they are in charge of internal affairs and sacrifices. Will they hide a few outsiders and prepare them as sacrifices? How is that possible? The Golden Eagle warrior shrugged and spread his hands. There are so many white ghosts, let alone next year's human sacrifices, even the year after that will be enough. This is not why we want to hide people, speaking of which, among us, who wouldn't hide a few beautiful female slaves? When we have something serious to do, when the time comes, you must hand it over. There is a door. Mr. Valensimo's eyes lit up. He took out a bottle of particularly strong distilled liquor, put it into the hands of the Golden Eagle warrior, and secretly activated a scroll. Then have you ever heard of someone hiding a necromancer? That kind of person who wears a black robe, is thin, and hates being exposed to the sun? Or, did you catch such a person last year? It really does. Under the dual effects of magic and strong alcohol, the Golden Eagle warrior had obviously opened his heart and said everything he knew. He reached out and asked Mr. Valensimo for another bottle of wine. With a strong finger, he opened the neck of the bottle and drank it with a tilt of his head. During the big festival last year, I was out on patrol, and I heard that there really was such a one. He was well hidden, but was revealed by the divine light, but he was not hacked to death. Nor was he dragged out to be used as a human sacrifice. This year's big festival has not yet arrived. Maybe it's just hidden, right? In the spiritual connection, Gretel could hear every word clearly. When the Titlan priestess's fifth bull attempt failed, he stopped the opponent's arm and said sternly, "I need an assistant, a level 9 magician belonging to our kingdom, the Magic Council, Necromancer Lin. Having such a necromancer is more important than dozens of other assistants. If you want me to complete vaccine production, give him to me immediately. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right?" Author, Giolan 2020. Chapter 953. Titlan's plump lips gradually tightened. In the dimly lit bullpen, Greet felt a chill running through her body. Looking closely, she saw a vertical line drawn out of her deep, dark pupils. "Lin? I've never heard of this person," the female snake replied calmly. "I've never heard of the necromancer or anything like that. Maybe he didn't reach the Eagle Country and was traveling somewhere else." As one of the 7 female snakes, she naturally knows many inside stories. For example, a certain sister secretly hid someone secretly and refused to hand it over. But no matter what, that is the female snake's own business. Moreover, except for a very small number of people who are allowed to enter, most outsiders are natural sacrifices. Being hidden by the female snake means that you don't have to become a human sacrifice. What a great thing! But I got the news that Lin is indeed in the Eagle Country and is in danger. Greet stared at her without blinking. Suddenly he bent down, picked up a black cat with white gloves from the ground, and stroked it gently. His familiar, Mr. Trochka, came to me for help a few days ago. According to him, Lin let him go before he was captured when something happened in your country. That's right. Mr. Trochka stood upright in Greet's arms. After recuperating for many days, he was much closer to the existence that was torn away from him. Gretel often prepared delicious food for him, and his spirit had recovered a lot at this time. He stretched out a paw, scratched and scratched in the void, and 5 nails popped out sharply. "Lin happened to you here. I watched him being captured by you. I ran away with all my strength, and I escaped with all my strength, and even got a bite. Hand him over." "I have never heard of such a person." Titlan stared at it with lowered eyes. This talking cat did startle her slightly, but only for a moment. After a moment, he calmed down, raised his gaze, and glanced at Gretel lightly. "But according to the rules of the Eagle Country, Outsiders who break the law will either be executed or sacrificed to the gods when caught. The companion you are looking for may be gone. With a meow, Mr. Trochka arched his back and his hair stood on end. Gretel pressed it down with one hand, covered its mouth, and nodded calmly. Well, it's really troublesome for you. But I believe that Lin must still be alive now. Since he is in danger, I have to go find him, and say goodbye. Saying this, he held down the black cat's head and turned around to leave. Walk all the way, raise your voice all the way. Balancimo, let's go. Call Bernard, Cirera, don't worry about the new ones, let's go find Lin. Let's go now. Wait. Wait, the priestess quickly chased after him. Greed had already waved his hand and threw out a bird. The little bird is jet black, shiny, and has a round body. When it is taken out, it is only as big as a palm. As soon as it leaves the palm, it grows in the wind. Hand-holding size, hugging size, half a person's height, one person's height. In an instant, the back was already higher than the human head, and Gretel jumped into its belly. The priestess wanted to grab him, but the little bird flapped its wings, and a bad wind blew in her face, pushing her staggering backwards. Stop him! Tidlin screamed. Before he finished speaking, Mr. Balancimo rushed forward, grabbed the ancient vine bird's wings and jumped into the bird's belly before it fell. The ancient vine bird flapped its wings twice and soared into the sky. On the other side, Cirilla also carried Bernard and flew high. The two golden eagle warriors immediately took off to intercept. One was turned sharply in mid-air by the ancient vine bird and rushed over his head, the other swung his spear, but was grabbed by the ancient vine bird and pecked at the head with its sharp beak. He had to give up the spear and lean up to avoid it. Cirilla had already grabbed Bernard and rushed into the belly of the ancient vine bird. Another golden eagle warrior turned back to intercept, and his spear shot out a golden light, which landed on the surface of the ancient vine, but was easily refracted, almost injuring one of his own. The ancient vine bird flapped its wings and soared into the sky. Seeing that it was getting further and further away, with the intention of never looking back, Tidlin had no choice but to take off quickly and go to intercept. Let me ask. Maybe he is locked up somewhere else, I don't know, she screamed sharply, stretched out her hands, and pulled out a black cloud to block the ancient vine bird. I'm asking the oracle again. If the person you want is really still there, why don't we just release him instead of traveling thousands of miles to find him? The ancient vine bird circled around the settlement, slowly lowering its height, and stared at her with two jewel-like eyes. Knowing that he could not delay any longer, Tidlin gritted his teeth, pulled out a hair from the top of his head, held it in his palm, and prayed in a low voice. After muttering a few words, his whole body trembled, and a mouthful of blood spurted on his hair. The hair was seen floating in the air, absorbing every drop of blood. The whole hair became dark and shiny, and swelled slightly. Then, he burned himself without fire and disappeared in a moment. Tidlin gasped feebly and fell to the ground. In the capital of the Eagle Kingdom, in the temple of the snake god, a big snake opened its eyes and hissed. The Tidlin snake lady has returned with a message soon. A mid-level priestess guarding the temple brought the news to the snake lady meeting. The other party insisted on releasing the necromancer Lin En. To this end, they did not hesitate to threaten to interrupt cooperation and leave on the spot. The Tidlin female snake felt that since we had promised to give him all the outsiders, holding this one with us would appear to be a breach of trust. With a flash, the eyes of the 6 female snakes in the temple were all focused on Nilka. Some are condemning, some are ridiculing, and some are simply enjoying the show. Only Chiwakoto, who was sitting in the middle, had a calm look in his eyes, without urging or pressuring him. He looked at his disciple calmly. What are your plans? Whatever you plan to do, makes sense. Nilka's breathing quickened slightly. Immediately, she raised her head stubbornly and faced her teacher. Since the other party is a threat, We can't let him go. If we let him go, what will we do if the son of the god of thunder directly takes him away? We will send out the 12 golden eagles to capture him and force him to help us fight against the plague girl. Then the other party is leaving now, a female snake sitting opposite said coldly. Nilka raised her chin. He traveled such a long way here, put in so much effort, and then just left? Let me tell you, if you want the youngest son of the god of thunder to work well, you have to hold the necromancer in your hands. If he can do it, he will live, if he can't do it, he will die. Under the dim light, the 5 female snakes were quarreling and each had their own opinions. After a while, Chiwakoto coughed slightly and suppressed the argument. Both sides need to take a step back in this matter. Nilka, you are like this. Half a day later, another hair on the head of the Titlan female snake in the Kestrel tribe burned. She pulled out her hair, and in the cold green flames, a poisonous tongue straightened up her upper body and hissed. Dear Lord Son of God, Master Lin En is indeed in the Eagle Kingdom. It's just that his condition is not very good right now and he is not suitable for moving for the time being. You should be able to see him after you complete your work. I want evidence. Gretel stared at Titlan. The other party at least acknowledged that Lin En was still there, which was a good thing. Then, he can go one step further. I want proof that Lin is okay now. I want his handwritten letter. I want him to be treated like a guest. In addition, I want the Eagle Nation to promise in the name of the country, and to guarantee in the name of the Eagle God and the Snake God, as long as I finish my job, Lin will be sent here intact. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Thanks to @Rotson for the 500 starting coin reward.